Good evening, my friends. I hope this message reaches you in a quiet moment, because what follows will not leave that quiet untouched. They said Africa was free. They said the chains were gone. But if you look closely, the metal still glints polished, renamed, and presented as democracy. Tonight, we look toward Cameroon, a nation that stands at the edge of history. Its streets seem calm, yet under that calm moves a heavy unease. Ballots have been cast, numbers announced, and again the same name returns. Paul Biya, 92 years old, in power since 1982. The government calls it victory. Many citizens call it repetition. In cafes and classrooms, people whisper, "How long can a story last before it becomes a loop?" Official results place Biya's win at a little more than 53%. The figures come from Yaoundé, the disbelief comes from everywhere else. Human rights observers report detentions and scattered clashes. Reuters lists at least 4 deaths, maybe 6. Officials call them minor incidents. Families call them names they still wait to hear answered at the police station gates. In Douala's narrow alleys, women sell plantains beneath faded posters of a smiling president they have not seen in decades. Teachers continue their lessons even as chalk dust mingles with the smell of tear gas. The government describes this as democracy in action. But democracy, without the right to speak freely, feels like theater played before an audience forbidden to clap. And beyond this, one election lies a larger question. What is freedom if it requires permission? Across the Sahel, that question has already found its answer. In Burkina Faso, a young captain named Ibrahim Traoré speaks to his nation about sovereignty, about standing upright in a world that often rewards bending down. "Power is never given," he said in a recent address. "It must be taken by responsibility, not by force." Those words have traveled farther than borders. In Cameroon, students share his speeches quietly on phones. In dormitories, they discuss the idea that poverty is not destiny and that submission, not hunger, keeps a country weak. They quote him not as a conqueror, but as a reminder. Nations rise first in the mind before they rise on their feet. For decades, the West has praised Cameroon for its stability. The word appears in every diplomatic statement, every briefing note from Paris or Washington. But stability built on silence is not peace, it is paralysis. The partnerships that promised prosperity often delivered dependence. Foreign loans that return as foreign influence, trade that favors those who already have more to trade. Cameroon's forests and minerals feed industries far away. In exchange, the country receives speeches about cooperation and aid. Meanwhile, the average citizen measures progress not by GDP, but by the price of bread and the distance to the nearest hospital. This imbalance is what the Sahel's younger leaders now challenge. In Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, military-led governments have pushed out foreign troops and demanded new terms for resource contracts. Their message is simple: a partnership is not equal if one side writes all the rules. In Cameroon, that message echoes in whispers rather than marches. The nation's history with colonial powers has left deep scars. Its economy and language still carry traces of those arrangements. Yet among the youth, a subtle transformation is taking place, a determination to define citizenship not by fear, but by participation. Observers call it unrest. Perhaps it is simply remembering. In the markets of Douala, graffiti appears overnight, "We are not afraid." In Bafoussam, murals of Thomas Sankara and Ibrahim Traoré stare out from cracked walls, 2 generations, one ideal. Even some within the ruling party speak softly of transition, a word that was once unthinkable. Government television continues to broadcast songs of celebration. Western embassies issue statements urging calm, yet calm can be deceptive. Soldiers at checkpoints salute, but their eyes wander. Every system built on habit eventually meets a generation that refuses to inherit it unchanged. Inside ministries, younger civil servants leak documents revealing lopsided mining deals. Lawyers petition courts that rarely listen. Priests deliver sermons about justice rather than obedience. These are not acts of rebellion. They are acts of awakening. Cameroon's dilemma is older than its president. It is the dilemma of many post-colonial states how to build independence while still bound by the architecture of dependency. For years, loyalty to foreign allies brought aid and training, but aid can become another chain when it dictates policy. Across the Atlantic, analysts debate what this new wave of African assertiveness means. Some fear instability, others see the natural course of political maturity. In truth, both may be right. Change rarely arrives neatly wrapped. In the corridors of power in Paris and Washington, officials read reports marked volatile. They speak of maintaining partnerships. Behind the language lies an older concern, the risk that African nations may start setting the prices of their own resources and choosing their own alliances. For the people of Cameroon, however, the issue is not global strategy, it is daily dignity. When a citizen must whisper to criticize, democracy becomes costume. When journalists vanish for asking questions, the promise of freedom becomes performance. Still, even under these restrictions, culture resists control. Musicians turn banned lyrics into coded proverbs. Artists paint walls with silent commentary. Online, a digital underground thrives students, teachers, traders, exchanging news faster than censors can delete it. Each message, each photograph, each shared idea becomes an act of presence. We are still here. We still think. And through all of it, Traoré's words hover like background music. If your freedom depends on your master's permission, you are not free, you are managed. No matter one's opinion of his rule, that sentence has resonance far beyond Burkina Faso. It touches the wider African conversation about what sovereignty means in a century of interdependence. It asks whether aid without accountability truly helps or merely postpones the day of reckoning. In Yaoundé, discussions like these are cautious but persistent. In universities, professors trace the region's long relationship with France from independence treaties to defense pacts. In classrooms, students ask why post-colonial states still use systems designed in colonial times. In living rooms, parents recall earlier hopes that each election would bring renewal. 43 years have passed since Paul Biya first took office. Few leaders anywhere have governed longer. Supporters argue that longevity brings stability. Critics reply that it discourages innovation. Between those two claims lies a generation that knows nothing else and wonders what change might even look like. For some, the answer lies in gradual reform, better governance, transparent budgets, protection for journalists. For others, it begins with imagination, the ability to believe that a nation can reinvent itself without descending into chaos. Across Africa, similar debates unfold. In Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, citizens test the limits of free expression. In Mali and Burkina Faso, leaders redefine their alliances. In Niger, the population weighs the cost of confrontation against the need for autonomy. The continent moves not as a single tide, but as many currents, converging towards self-determination. Cameroon's story fits within this larger motion. The protests, the censorship, the guarded optimism, all are signs of a society negotiating its next chapter. Whether that chapter will be written in anger or in dialogue depends on choices made now by leaders and by citizens alike. History offers warnings. Revolutions that rush often devour their own hopes. Yet history also offers proof that silence never saved anyone. Somewhere between patience and paralysis lies the path to renewal. International organizations urge dialogue between government and opposition. Civil society groups call for the release of detainees. The African Union emphasizes constitutional order. Behind the formal language is a recognition that genuine stability cannot be imposed. It must be built from trust. When night falls over Yaoundé, the city seems peaceful. But in the quiet hum of generators, in the glow of phone screens, conversation continues. A new vocabulary takes shape. Words like accountability, transition, and sovereignty appear in casual talk. It is in such small shifts that large changes begin. From the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, This quiet persistence links countries together more powerfully than any treaty. Young Africans speak less about ideology and more about dignity, the simple wish to live without fear, to work without exploitation, to speak without consequence. In this sense, Cameroon's election is not just a national event, it is a mirror held up to an entire continent. It shows the cost of repeating the past and the price of daring to imagine the future. The cameras may capture soldiers on patrol and diplomats giving statements, but beneath those images lies another story of citizens refusing to forget, of artists recording memory, of parents teaching children the value of standing upright. Every society eventually reaches a moment when obedience feels heavier than risk. Cameroon may be approaching that moment. Whether it turns to reform or repression, to dialogue or denial, will shape not only its own destiny, but the region's perception of what governance in Africa can become. Across the border in Burkina Faso, Traoré's experiment with independence faces its own tests: security challenges, economic strain, international pressure. Yet his words continue to circulate because they touch a deeper nerve: the belief that a continent long described from outside can now speak for itself. That belief is contagious. It inspires but also unsettles. To some, it sounds like hope. To others, it sounds like defiance. To history, it may sound like the first notes of renewal. As dawn approaches over Cameroon, the streets remain watchful. The curfew lifts, but the tension lingers. Vendors open their stalls, children walk to school, journalists type cautious headlines. Life goes on, yet beneath the routine there is awareness, an understanding that governance, like daylight, must constantly be earned. The coming months will reveal much: whether the administration can bridge the gap between authority and legitimacy, whether civil society can remain active without repression, whether the continent's new conversation about sovereignty becomes cooperation or confrontation. For now, what endures is the rhythm beneath the noise, the steady pulse of a people thinking about their place in the world. It is not yet revolution, nor resignation. It is reflection turning slowly into resolve. And perhaps that is how history truly begins, not with a shout, but with a quiet realization that silence itself has limits. So, my friends, when you hear the phrase "Africa is stable," remember to ask, stable for whom? Stability must serve those who live it, not those who measure it from afar. Cameroon's story is still unfolding. Its citizens are writing it line by line, choice by choice. Across the Sahel, others watch, aware that the same questions cross every border. Who defines freedom? Who benefits from fear? The answers will not come from one leader, or one protest, or one speech. They will come from the slow, patient work of citizens refusing to be invisible. That is the truest form of power, the kind that cannot be given and therefore cannot be taken away. The night over Cameroon is deep, but the horizon glows faintly. The first light belongs not to governments or generals, but to those who decide, quietly and firmly, that they will no longer whisper when they mean to speak. Good night, my friends, and may the dawn, when it comes, belong to everyone who has waited for it.